Welcome back to Fuel Up Classic. Is it ever a wise decision to buy back a classic car that you once owned? Well, here's my one. This is my 1985 Jaguar XJ6 Series 3, and it's a car now that I have purchased back. I've owned it for the second time for about 3 months. Very much a heart over head decision, as so often people that are classic car enthusiasts do. But does it ever really make any sense? And have you guys ever done this at home? Because I'd love to hear your classic car stories as well. Have you bought a car back that you had many, many years ago, and did it all work out well in the end? I truly hope it did. But come and have a closer look at my XJ6 Series 3. I'll show you around the car. It's not perfect by any means, but I'm so glad to have this car back with me. It's actually my all-time favourite car out of all the cars I've ever driven and all the cars I currently own. This Series 3 is the one that I hope will stick around for the longest time. Come and take a closer look and I'll tell you more about it. So what do you think? I personally think that these old series Jaguar XJs are aging really rather well. They've gone through the banger stage, and a lot of these cars did end up on the banger racing track because they are so prone to corrosion and they're very, very expensive to restore, and they've never really been worth a huge amount of money. But now they're a rare old thing. You just don't see them. The Series 1s, the 2s and the 3s like this, they're a rare sight even at car shows. But this particular car is a 1985 example, 4.2 litre straight six, and I will show you under the bonnet in a moment. Finished in metallic sage green. It's got the pepper pot wheels. It's got a lovely pinstripe for all the way down the side. And I still think it looks like a lovely, lovely car. I don't know if Jaguar ever made a prettier saloon than the series models. I'm not quite sure on that. But when it comes to my ownership, the first time round, I bought this very car back in about 2012, if I remember correctly. And I would have been about 21 years of age. I was still a university student at the time, and I had no business smoking around in a big old 4.2 litre Jag. But they were quite cheap then. And I loved this car. It was a fantastic car to own, but it tested my patience on more than one occasion, and I probably didn't have the finances or the skill to keep something like this running. But there is another reason for why I had this car. I wasn't just a sort of jumped up sort of 21-year-old university student that thought, look at me, I'm driving a big Jaguar. There was a much bigger personal reason for why I owned this car and why I kept it for so many years afterwards, and I will tell you that later on in the video. But for now, have a little look under the bonnet of this car. And by no means have I cleaned it, or it's exactly as it arrived with me. It needs some detailing. I want to take the cam covers off and repaint those and smarten things up under here. But this is the 4.2 litre straight six, and in the Series 3 it gained fuel injection. That was probably its biggest advancement over the previous models. But this old engine can date right back to the sort of the 1940s, early 50s, and it's pretty incredible really that they were still using it right up until the late 80s in their cars. It's a great engine. It can be a little highly strung in my experience. And I'm just thinking now of some of the horrendous bills that I had way back in sort of 10 years ago with this car as I used it a little bit more and I covered mileage. I went through a run of bad luck with it really, and in hindsight it's just an old car and it needed maintenance, but I probably didn't fully understand it then. The cylinder head was rebuilt, I remember that, and it had a new radiator, it had all new water pump, new hoses, everything all at the same time. And I remember that bill being about twice what I paid for the car in the first place. But I was already hooked on this car at that point, and I worked every hour under the sun and bought and sold cars to build up the money to have this car back in tip-top mechanical condition. And luckily it's really only covered about 10,000 miles since I had all that done, and it runs absolutely brilliantly. There's cosmetic things to do, but mechanically it's in pretty good order. One thing I have learned during my time with an old Jaguar is even when you think you've got everything sorted and everything's 100%, it will throw a little job at you that ends up taking up your weekends. It's usually a very simple thing, but it always needs some kind of fettling or something just crops up out the blue. And today is even a case in point. The car's been in the garage for the last couple of months because the weather has been so awful. And I brought it out of the garage, and once I got it started up, the battery had gone a little bit low. So got it fired up and the fuel gauge wouldn't register. And let's not forget, this car has twin fuel tanks. It's quite a remarkable piece of design. They're two separate tanks, two separate filler caps, and you flick with a switch on the dashboard between the tanks and it wouldn't register anything this morning. But as the car warmed up, and it is an old girl now, it's nearly 40 years old, but I left it running for about 10 minutes. I knew there was fuel in there. The gauge started to come to life. Then I noticed that the lights on the dashboard weren't working. So I was playing around with they call it a rheostat, the dimmer switch basically, and that wouldn't work. And then I came back to it 10 minutes later and they're all working again. It just needs a little bit of time to wake up in the mornings, this car now, and I can forgive it. Another little quirks with it that I've just lived with is the aerial has now stopped working. I think it's seized up where it comes out the rear wing there, or perhaps the connections work loose. But during my time with this car, and I've known it for probably 14 years now, it's only ever managed to pick up Classic FM on the radio station. It won't pick up any other channel. Whether the aerial works or not, the original radio will only register Classic FM crystal clear. So every time I drive it, I listen to Classic FM, and actually when you're sat in the lovely interior, it kind of suits the whole ambience of the car anyway. So I'm not complaining. But let's have a little look round, because it's got some great little 80s quirks, this car, as well, and some fun little features. So let me show you a little bit more of the car. So there we have it. I don't regret my decision in buying this car back at all. And there is another much more personal reason as to why I bought this car back. And truthfully, even if this car had been a complete wreck, I still would have bought it back. Because as I touched upon, first time round when I bought this car, I was probably too young, and I certainly didn't have the bank balance or the knowledge to keep a car like this in tip-top condition. As much as I tried, it was always just slightly out of reach. But when I bought it all those years ago, it coincided with my father being told that he didn't have too much longer left. And I come from a family of lifelong Jaguar enthusiasts. My parents have owned pretty much every Jaguar available from the 1950s onwards. They're huge Jaguar enthusiasts, and when he was told that he wouldn't be around for too much longer, you start to think of things very differently. And my first thought was, I want to take my dad out in a Jag, because I have wonderful childhood memories of being in the back seats of several different Daimlers and Jaguars and Series 1s, 2s and 3s. And I wanted to make those memories with him. And I did. I managed to buy this car, and for the last few months of his life, we went out in this car. He got to know it, and although he probably thought I was mad to be buying it, I think he was secretly very proud. And those memories are incredibly dear to me, and it's the biggest reason I bought the car back. It's the biggest reason I regretted selling it in the first place. But to have the opportunity again to own it and to cherish those memories every time I drive it is incredible, and it's worth more than anything of the financial value of this car. But crucially, it's time to make new memories with this car. It's time to use it and enjoy it and do new things with it. It's going to be, well, I don't plan on ever selling it, to be perfectly honest, so it's going to feature on the channel a lot more. And I'd love to hear from you guys of where you'd like to see it and what you'd like to, you know, suggest to do with it. But there it is. I just wanted to show you around my latest purchase, and I'll bring back to the original point of when I started the video of, is it ever a good idea to buy back a classic car that you once owned? For me, it absolutely is. But I'd love to hear your stories as well. Every classic car tells a story, and every enthusiast has got great memories with a particular car. So please share yours below, and I'd love to hear them, good and bad. We've all been there, we've all had a bad car, and sometimes, strangely, they're the cars that we fondly remember the most. But there we are. There's another video. We're going to go back to the normal format very soon, as soon as the weather improves and we've got no salt on the road. It means I can get more classic cars out to review and to show you. But if you like what you see, and if you enjoyed this video, please do subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you.